What if the reason your life hasn't changed isn't because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're trying too hard, too fast? We live in a world obsessed with extremes. Hustle harder, change overnight, burn the boats. But beneath the noise, there's a quieter truth, one that most people overlook. Change doesn't begin with giant leaps. It begins with the smallest, almost invisible steps, the kind of steps that seem so simple you might ignore them. But those are the ones that matter most. Every single day you're making choices, most of them on autopilot. You wake up and check your phone. You scroll through other people's lives before you've even opened your own eyes to yours. You rush through the day reacting instead of choosing. And the worst part, you don't even notice it happening. Not because you're careless, but because the patterns you've built are invisible. They feel normal. They feel like who you are. But they're not who you are. They're just habits. And here's the hard truth. Your habits are shaping your life far more than your intentions are. You can dream big. You can have ambition. But if your daily actions don't match that vision, you'll stay stuck. Not because you lack potential, not because you're weak, but because the systems you live by aren't built to support the future you want. Most people are waiting for the right moment to change. The new year, the next Monday, a sign from the universe. But the truth is, nothing changes until you do. And it starts with one small decision, one habit, one shift that feels almost insignificant, but changes everything. Because here's what no one tells you. The way you do the small things is the way you'll do everything. If you can master one tiny promise to yourself and keep it, you start building something far more powerful than motivation. You build trust. And once you trust yourself again, anything becomes possible. The reason most people fail isn't because they're not capable. It's because they try to change too much, too fast. They overwhelm their brain. They aim to flip their entire life upside down in a week. And when it doesn't work, they blame themselves. They say they're undisciplined, unmotivated. But they're wrong. They're just misinformed. Psychology tells us that real transformation doesn't happen by force. It happens by repetition, small, consistent actions done over time. That's how the brain rewires. That's how the identity begins to shift. Not from pressure, but from alignment. From showing up day after day and doing the thing, even when it's small, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. That's where the power is. That's where the breakthrough happens. Because when you start stacking those small wins, something changes inside you. You begin to feel momentum. You begin to feel control. You begin to realize you're not a victim of your past. You're the architect of your future. Every habit you choose is a brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. And that's the reward for staying with this message. By the end of it, you won't just have a list of habits to try. You'll have a roadmap to rebuild your life, one small habit at a time. You'll understand exactly why these habits work and how to make them stick. But more than that, you'll feel something most people haven't felt in a long time, hope. Hope that your future isn't decided yet. Hope that you can change, no matter how many times you've failed. Hope that you don't need to do everything at once. You just need to do one thing. Again and again. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about waking up every day and choosing progress over comfort, discipline over distraction, identity over image. Because the truth is, your life doesn't change when you finally achieve your biggest goal. It changes the moment you decide to stop breaking promises to yourself. It changes the moment you say, enough, and mean it. Most people won't do this. Most will stay stuck. They'll keep waiting, keep hoping for a shortcut. But not you. You're here because something inside you knows it's time. You're ready to reclaim your power. You're ready to build a life that doesn't just look good on the outside, but feels good on the inside. And it all starts here, not with a massive overhaul, not with a dramatic transformation, but with the smallest shift in how you show up. Today, small habits, big change. That's the truth no one tells you, but now you know. So stay with it, let it sink in, because the next few minutes could spark the kind of momentum that changes everything forever. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That single idea can shift everything if you let it. Because goals are exciting. They give you a glimpse of the future. But systems, habits, are what get you there. Every successful person you admire didn't get there by accident or by some massive overnight change. They got there by doing small things over and over, long after the excitement wore off. But here's the part that most people miss. Small habits don't just change your results. They change your identity. When you act like the person you want to become, even in tiny ways, your brain begins to believe it. And once your identity shifts, everything else follows. This is how true change begins, not by saying, I want to be healthy, but by acting like someone who values their health every single day, even when it's uncomfortable. Not by waiting until you feel confident, but by choosing courage before confidence ever arrives. That's the magic of small habits. They teach your brain a new story, one action at a time. And the brain listens. See, your brain is wired to protect you. It avoids risk. It fears failure. That's why dramatic change is so hard. It feels dangerous, overwhelming. So when you try to flip your life upside down in one move, your mind resists, and it wins. But small habits, they fly under the radar. They don't trigger the same fear response. They feel safe, manageable, repeatable. That's not weakness, that's strategy. Every time you complete a small habit, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. It's the chemical of reward, of motivation. And that feeling becomes addictive, in the best way. You start craving progress, you start chasing the feeling of, I did it, no matter how small it was. That craving becomes momentum. And momentum is how people create real, lasting change. But here's the deeper truth most people overlook. Habits aren't just about what you do. They're about what you believe. When you consistently follow through on small actions, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you're reliable. You prove that you're capable. You prove that you are not at the mercy of your old patterns. You are in control. And that belief, that's everything. Because once you believe you can change, you do. And you don't need to have it all figured out, you just need to start. Most people think they need motivation to act. But it's the other way around. Action creates motivation. The more you do, the more you want to do. And it starts with just one thing. One decision that tells your brain we're not who we used to be anymore. Think about that. One choice today can begin rewriting the story you've been living in for years. Not because that choice is loud, but because it's true. Because it comes from a place deep inside you that's tired of surviving and ready to live. A part of you that's done pretending, done waiting, done settling. You know what that part of you is asking for? Integrity, not perfection. Integrity. The space where your actions and your intentions finally match. Where you stop saying what you're going to do someday and start doing what you can today, even if it's small, even if no one sees it, because you see it, and you matter. When you align your actions with the person you want to become, you begin to feel whole again. The gap between your potential and your reality begins to close. And with every step you feel stronger, clearer, more powerful. That's not just growth, that's transformation. But let's be clear, this isn't easy. If it were, everyone would do it. Most people stay trapped in cycles that feel safe but slowly destroy them. Distraction, excuses, comfort. They live in reaction mode, always waiting for a better time. But better doesn't come. Not until you choose it. And that choice isn't some huge dramatic event. It's small, quiet. It looks like getting up when you said you would, saying no when it matters, showing up for yourself even when no one's watching. That's where change happens. That's where power lives. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. That's what separates those who talk about change from those who actually do it. The people who win aren't the ones who go the hardest. They're the ones who keep going when it gets hard, who trust the process even when the results haven't shown up yet, who plant the seed and keep watering it even when the soil still looks empty. Because they know something others don't, growth happens underground before it ever shows up in your life. And if you stay committed, it will show up. The energy you put in is never wasted. The habits you build today may feel small now, but they are shaping the foundation of everything you'll become. So keep going, keep building. One small shift, one small promise, one small action that echoes into the rest of your life. This is how you change your story. Not someday, today. Change starts when you stop negotiating with your old self. The version of you that hits snooze, that breaks promises, that chooses comfort over commitment. That version has had enough control. It's familiar, yes, but familiarity doesn't equal fulfillment. It just means you've been living in a pattern long enough to mistake it for who you are, but deep down you know better. You know there's more. You can feel it every time you catch yourself thinking, this can't be it. And that voice inside you, the one that keeps whispering for more, that's not noise. That's your truth. It's not asking for perfection. It's asking for progress, for proof, for evidence that you're not just wishing your life away, but actually stepping into it. That's where small habits become your armor, your anchor. They're not about discipline for the sake of control. They're about becoming someone you can trust again. When you keep the smallest promise to yourself, something inside you shifts. The doubt doesn't disappear, but it gets quieter. The fear doesn't vanish, but it loses its grip, because now you're building a pattern of showing up, and that pattern becomes identity. You are what you repeat. If you want to feel proud of who you are, start doing things that build that pride. Not one day, not when you have more time, now. Because time isn't what changes you, decisions do. Time passes either way, but who you become as it passes, that's up to you. It starts in the morning, when you decide to begin with intention instead of impulse. It starts when you say, I'll just do this one thing, and then actually do it. Not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. That's where confidence comes from. Not from feeling ready, but from being reliable. You become confident when you trust that you'll show up, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. And those days will come. You will feel tired, unmotivated, stretched thin, but that's exactly when small habits matter most, because they give you something to hold on to, a rhythm, a reminder that even in chaos you are still choosing who you become. The person who drinks water before coffee is telling themselves, my health matters. The person who writes down one intention for the day is saying, I control my focus. These aren't random acts, they're identity markers. And over time, they stack. They form a version of you who no longer needs to wait for motivation to act, because you've built something stronger, discipline, direction, self-respect. And once you feel that, once you experience what it's like to actually believe in yourself again, there's no going back. You stop craving shortcuts. You stop needing external validation. You stop bouncing between highs and lows, because you've built a steady foundation beneath you, one that can hold the weight of your goals. One that reminds you, even on the days you stumble, that you are still moving forward. That's the gift of small habits. They don't just help you do more, they help you become more. Not by force, but by flow. Not by pressure, but by purpose. And the beautiful thing is, anyone can start, right now. No special tools, no perfect plan, just one decision, repeated often enough to become a part of you. That's how you take back your power. That's how you create a life that reflects your potential, not your past. And the truth is, you don't need to believe in the whole journey yet. You just need to believe in your next step. That's it. One honest step, one small act of self-respect. From there, momentum takes over. It doesn't matter how far you've fallen, how long you've been stuck, how many times you've said you'd change and didn't. What matters is that you're still here, still willing, still listening to that voice that refuses to stay silent. That alone means there's still fight in you, and fight is all you need to begin again. The greatest transformation doesn't come from doing what's easy. It comes from doing what's right, even when it's inconvenient. And the right thing? It's not some grand, dramatic change. It's making one small choice today that honors who you want to be tomorrow. That's enough. That's how you break the cycle. This is your chance to build momentum so powerful it carries you forward even when motivation fades. To build a life rooted in consistency, not chaos, intention, not impulse, and to finally become someone who doesn't just hope for a better life, but lives it, one small habit at a time. Keep moving, keep choosing, because every time you do, you're becoming the person you were meant to be. The greatest shift in your life will come the moment you stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a myth. Waiting to feel ready is how dreams decay in silence. It's how potential rots while you scroll through the highlight reels of people already living the life you want. But what if the difference between you and them isn't talent, luck, or timing? What if it's just that they started before they felt ready? That's the raw truth. They didn't wait for confidence, they built it. They didn't wait for clarity. They moved forward and created it. Because deep down they understood something most never realize: action leads, emotion follows. And the same is true for you. You want to feel motivated? Move. You want to feel inspired? Begin. Because waiting to feel like it is the fastest way to stay exactly where you are. The moment you act, even in the smallest way, you begin to shift your emotional state. You interrupt the doubt. You silence the noise. You step into control. This is where small habits become your weapon. They anchor you when your emotions try to pull you off course. They keep you steady when life gets chaotic. You don't need to feel strong to do something strong. You just need to choose what the strongest version of you would do and do it anyway. And every time you do that, you create a new story. No longer the story of "I'll start tomorrow." Not the story of "I just can't stay consistent." And not the story of "maybe this isn't for me." And now you write the story of discipline, of resilience, of follow-through. And that story becomes your identity. This is how you take your power back, by doing the opposite of what your excuses tell you. When your mind says stay in bed, get up. When your habits say scroll endlessly, put the phone down. When your fear says don't try, take one small step forward. That's how you win, quietly, repeatedly, without applause, without permission. You'll begin to notice something powerful happening. The friction that used to make action feel impossible starts to fade. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. You've trained your mind to move without needing permission from your feelings. You've trained your body to act in alignment with your vision, not your mood. That's freedom. That's self-leadership. And that kind of inner strength, it's rare. Most people are slaves to their feelings. They don't act unless it feels good. They don't change unless it feels safe. But growth never feels safe. It feels uncertain, uncomfortable. That's how you know it's working, because comfort is where dreams die. It's where potential stays buried. But discomfort, that's the signal. That's the sign you're stretching, evolving, stepping into territory your old self can't survive in. And that's exactly the point. Your old self doesn't belong where you're going. You've outgrown the version of you that settles, the version that waits for the perfect plan, the one that needs everything to feel easy before making a move. That version got you here. But here isn't where you're meant to stay. You're not here to survive life. You're here to lead it, to build it with intention, to rise when it's hard, to move when you're tired, to speak truth into your own mind when doubt tries to take over. And truth sounds like this: I don't have to feel ready to act. I just have to act. Once you understand that, you stop letting temporary emotions determine your long-term destiny. You stop labeling yourself as someone who lacks discipline, because you realize discipline isn't a personality trait. It's a habit, one that anyone can build, one that you are building right now. Every small decision you make in the face of resistance builds that muscle. It gets easier, not because life changes, but because you've changed. You've become the kind of person who does what needs to be done, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching, even when the voice in your head is screaming for the easy way out. And that person is unstoppable. Because now, your life isn't being controlled by fear or fatigue or external circumstances. It's being guided by vision, fueled by consistency, protected by the habits that keep you grounded. You don't need more time. You need more intention. You don't need more motivation. You need more action. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to become who you were always meant to be. Underneath the noise, beneath the fear, beyond the past, you are already enough to begin. And that beginning will unlock the path you've been searching for all along. So act, not later, now. One small step right where you are, because you don't need to be ready. You just need to be willing. There's a point where something shifts inside you, not because the world changes, but because you decide to stop waiting for the world to change. You stop waiting for approval, for the perfect time, for everything to line up. You stop living your life on pause and finally hit play. That's the moment you reclaim your power. And it starts by realizing this: no one is coming to save you. That might sound harsh, but it's the most liberating truth you'll ever embrace. Because once you stop waiting to be rescued, you start building the strength to rescue yourself. You stop handing your life over to circumstances, to excuses, to distractions. You stop giving away your potential in exchange for comfort. This is where real accountability begins, not the kind that's forced or guilt-driven, but the kind that comes from deep self-respect, the kind that says, I deserve more, and I will no longer be the reason I don't have it. That kind of mindset doesn't rely on willpower. It's driven by clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you value, and what kind of life you're no longer willing to tolerate. When you know your why, the how stops being the problem. Obstacles shrink, noise fades, and the habits that once felt hard begin to feel like alignment, because they are. They're no longer just tasks. They're a reflection of who you're becoming. Every time you get up instead of giving up, you reinforce that identity. Every time you choose focus over distraction, growth over comfort, discipline over impulse, you cast a vote for your future self. And those votes, they compound, quietly, powerfully, until one day you look around and realize you're not faking it anymore. You are it. That's the hidden beauty of small habits. They don't ask you to be extraordinary. They ask you to be consistent, to show up, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient, because that's where the edge is. That's where transformation lives, in the choices no one sees. When you live like that, something incredible happens. You stop chasing motivation and start embodying it. You stop needing inspiration and start becoming the source of it. Your energy changes. Your presence sharpens. People feel it, not because you tell them, but because your actions speak louder than your words ever could. You start to respect yourself, not for being perfect, but for being honest. For doing what's right, not just what's easy. For rising above the noise and building something real, something lasting, something unshakable. That's not hype, that's integrity. And integrity is rare. You won't always feel like you're making progress. Some days will feel slow, some habits will feel pointless. But remember this: success isn't always visible in the moment. Growth is often silent. And just because you can't see the results yet doesn't mean the work isn't working. Trust the process. Trust the quiet days. Trust the repetition. You don't need fireworks. You need follow-through. And you already have everything it takes. You have the strength. You have the capacity. What you need is permission from yourself to stop playing small, to stop delaying your potential, to stop using who you were as an excuse not to become who you can be. You're not stuck. You're just scared. And fear only has power when you obey it. But you're not here to obey fear. You're here to overcome it. That's why the small habits matter so much. Because they don't just help you do differently. They teach you to think differently. They rewire the belief that says, I can't. They prove that every time you act despite resistance, you can. You did. And you will again. That kind of mindset isn't given. It's earned. Through repetition, through choice. Through showing up day after day when the results haven't arrived, when the old version of you tries to pull you back, and you say no. You say no to the excuses, or no to the waiting, no to the patterns that never served you. And you say yes to the work, yes to the process, yes to the vision that's bigger than your fear. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be committed. Because commitment is louder than doubt, louder than fear, louder than the old voice in your head telling you, this isn't worth it. It is worth it. You are worth it. This is your turning point. Not because everything changes overnight, but because you finally understand that it never needed to. You just needed to start, stay consistent, and refuse to quit. That's how lives change. Not with one big decision, but with hundreds of small ones that no one else sees, but you feel. And you feel them because you're building something real. Keep going. Keep showing up. Keep casting votes for the person you were always meant to become. Because that version of you isn't waiting at the finish line. They're being built right now. You've already taken the hardest step, acknowledging that something needs to change. But now comes the real work, the part where you learn to embrace discomfort, not as something to fear, but as something to welcome. Because growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It doesn't happen when everything's easy or safe. It happens when you stretch yourself beyond what you thought was possible. And that's exactly what you're doing now. Every time you push past your limits, every time you choose discipline over distraction, you expand what you thought you could handle. You push the boundaries of who you are, and that's where transformation occurs. It's uncomfortable, it's challenging, it's messy, but it's also where greatness is forged. The difference between those who live ordinary lives and those who create extraordinary ones is simple. Extraordinary people don't fear discomfort. They understand it's a necessary ingredient in the recipe for success. They know that the most meaningful rewards come from the deepest struggles. And when you start to shift your mindset to see challenges as opportunities, you begin to understand something crucial. Discomfort isn't your enemy, it's your ally. When you begin to build this new habit of embracing discomfort, you stop avoiding challenges and start seeking them, because you realize that the more you face them, the more you grow. And with growth comes strength. With strength comes confidence. And with confidence comes the ability to take on even greater challenges. Think about the person you want to become, the person you know is buried beneath fear and doubt. That person isn't afraid of discomfort. They're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to stumble along the way. They know that every misstep is just a lesson in disguise. Every failure is a stepping stone to success. Every challenge is just another layer of muscle, building resilience in the process. And this is where your habits make the difference. Your small daily actions create the framework that allows you to move through discomfort without breaking. They create the foundation that holds you steady when life throws its hardest punches. Because you've built your identity around consistency, around showing up, around doing the hard things when no one else will. This isn't about instant gratification. This is about building a life you can be proud of. A life where you don't look back and regret, wondering what could have been if you had only pushed a little harder, stayed a little longer, or faced your fears a little sooner. This is about taking control of your future, step by step, habit by habit. It's easy to get distracted by what other people are doing. It's easy to compare your journey to theirs and feel like you're not moving fast enough. But here's the truth. Your path is unique. Your pace is your own. The only person you need to compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. The only competition is the version of you who almost gave up. The version of you who thought you weren't enough. The version of you who doubted your potential. But that version of you, they don't exist anymore. You've grown. You've evolved. You've become the person who keeps going when the road gets tough. You've learned that it's not about how quickly you reach your destination. It's about how deeply you commit to the journey, no matter the pace. Every step you take, no matter how small, is progress. Every habit you form, every small win you stack, brings you closer to the person you were always meant to be. And even when it feels like nothing is changing, trust that you are laying the groundwork for something monumental. You're transforming in ways that aren't immediately visible, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. And here's the real key. This process never stops. Growth doesn't have an endpoint. You don't suddenly arrive. Every habit you build, every skill you master is just the beginning of the next phase. You don't reach a place where you can stop trying. You reach a place where you understand that the pursuit of growth is the only way to live. So, let go of the idea that there's a perfect moment to begin. Let go of the notion that you'll suddenly have all the answers. Let go of the pressure to do it all at once. Life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And the key to winning that marathon is building the habits that will carry you through the entire journey. That means you keep showing up, even on the hard days, even when you don't feel like it, even when it's uncomfortable, because that's where the change happens. You have everything inside you that you need to succeed. You have the strength, you have the resilience, you have the heart. Now, you need the consistency to see it through. You need the discipline to keep moving, even when the results aren't immediate. Because that's the only way to turn potential into reality. Through consistent action, through commitment, through the willingness to keep going even when it's hard. And when you do that, you'll look back and realize something incredible. All the pain, all the struggle, all the discomfort was worth it. Because it was those very moments that made you into someone who no longer hesitates, someone who no longer doubts their potential, Someone who knows they are capable of achieving whatever they set their mind to. That person is you. And the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the decision to keep moving forward. So do it. Keep going, keep growing, keep showing up, because the life you're building right now, it's worth every ounce of effort you've put into it.